DNA Today informs you on what's happening in the genetic world. I talk news stories and lessons, everything to keep you educated on the ever-changing world of genetics. You can tune in Mondays at 11:30 a.m. to hear me live on WHUS.org or on the radio if you're in the stores area, 91.7 FM. Today I'm reviewing a presentation about the Precision Medicine Initiative given at Jackson Laboratories Genomic Medicine in Farmington, Connecticut. And I was able to attend this presentation, and it was really cool. There was a lot of people there. The whole auditorium there at the beautiful Jackson Laboratories was filled. Some people were flowing over into other rooms and watching on monitors, and it was really an exciting presentation all about the Precision Medicine Initiative and where precision medicine is going. This was led by Dr. Jo Handelsman, and Dr. Jo Handelsman is on the Obama Precision Medicine Initiative, and she's also the Director for Science at the White House. Only a few hours after this presentation, it was announced that the 21st Century Cures Act was passed in the House of Representatives. So I'll go over kind of what the act has the potential to do, what are the consequences that could happen from it, what are the advantages that we can get out of it if it passes the Senate. And these two are linked because the 21st Century Cures Act has a lot to do with, or a portion of it is on precision medicine, and it also has an aspect that is really great for the rare disease community. So I definitely want to hit those big topics within this act, as well as go over what Dr. Handelsman had to share at JAX. So I'll start with that. So on Friday, both of these happened on Friday, July 10th, and Jo Handelsman is the Associate Director for Science at the White House, and again, she presented on precision medicine at Jackson Laboratories. And if we go back to January 2015, Obama launched the initiative explaining, quote, "I'm launching a new precision medicine initiative to bring us closer to curing diseases like cancer and diabetes, and to give us all of us access to the personalized information we need to keep ourselves and our families healthier." End quote. So when he first announced this, I did a whole episode about his proposal and how the money broke down, what the goals were for it, short-term, long-term, what the Precision Medicine Initiative is really about. And so I did that back in January. So you can go to dnapodcast.com if you want to hear a really comprehensive recap on everything that he covered in his proposal of it and announcing this. But Dr. Jo Handelsman obviously emphasized on the potential power of precision medicine, saying, quote, "In the 21st century, we will see few elements of medicine that change the way precision medicine will." So one of the reasons this is because this initiative focuses on the patients. She was quoted saying that patients are partners in both the results and the treatment process, which is kind of a new thing with patients so involved in the process and learning more about things as they go, and it's not all closed doors. It's a little bit more open than it used to be. And she shared how Connecticut is actually one of the states that's leading the precision medicine movement, and there are very few states that have made more investments than Connecticut has made and continues to make. Connecticut has a lot of different institutions that really are contributing to personalized medicine and, precision medicine. We can use those interchangeably. Now, the mission statement of the initiative is to enable a new era of medicine through research, technology, and policies that empower patients, researchers, and providers to work together towards the development of individualized treatments. And that's really the two key words here is individualized treatments, because that really, when it comes down to it, that's what precision medicine is all about. She was really quick to point out that the concept of precision medicine is not new. This seems to be something very new to 2015, that we're hearing about this a lot in social media, and we're hearing people write about it in blog posts and talk about it on radio, but this is not a new concept. It's just being applied more in healthcare than ever. Now, a perfect example she used that most of us can relate to is prescription eyeglasses. So if a patient has poor eyesight, doctors don't just give you as the patient a standard pair of eyeglasses like, oh, okay, your eyes aren't perfect. Here is a pair of glasses. It's a little more complicated than that, right? So you go through and you get examined, okay, is one better or two better? And you sit there for a while and you keep going through it. And what's happening is he's tailoring, or she, that the eye doctor is tailoring your prescription. And so your eyesight, what they're going to be giving you. So once they tailor it to you, they'll give you a prescription for specific lenses or contacts that you require. That if you give those to someone else, it may not work for them. Unless you're in that same group that you're saying, like for me, I'm -3.5 in one eye, -3 in the other. So not even between my eyes are the same. So eyesight and, eyewear are very personalized, very individualized. It's precise, precision medicine. Another great example is blood types. And this one we can go a little bit further back in history. So this may be one of the earliest uses of precision medicine because we're going back to 1900, 1901, when some blood transfusions would work beautifully, saving patients' lives, while other times it would fail and patients would die. And at the University of Vienna, Karl Landsteiner was kind of wondering why this was, why some patients it was very successful while in others it failed. So he was able to discover that humans had different blood types and that some were compatible while others were not. And this was very crucial information that allows us to now select compatible blood types when performing a blood transfusion. And so that's a great example. And we're going back over 100 years. That's how long precision medicine has been happening. And probably before that, but that's the example I'm using here. And recently it's become more in the news, and further developments are being made in multiple areas of medicine to really be focusing on how this is where medicine is headed, in that we're not just, you have this disease, here's your prescription, here's your medication, here's your treatment. It's, okay, you have this disease, but let's look at other factors. Let's look at what subtype of the disease you have or other things that play a role in this and say, okay, this is a treatment that you're more suited for. And there's still trial and error, of course. We're not perfect yet, but it's getting more and more precise. And as we can see in these examples, it's vital to know traits of a person, and as Dr. Handelsman said, quote, knowing how their body responds and offering treatments for that. So Precision Medicine Initiative, before it was a thing, before January 2015, there were calls for precision medicine to be focused on and applied in healthcare more. So if we go back to 2004, Francis Collins, who's the head of the NIH, wrote an article really pushing precision medicine. Now, during this time, it would have been really expensive to start this push for personalized medicine because we weren't as far, obviously, we weren't as far in technology development as we are now. When you compare, 11 years ago, we were a little bit further behind. So now that we have all of these technology advancements, it really is a good time to be doing this. So in 2006, a junior senator from Illinois, who was actually Obama, introduced Senate legislation, and it was not passed, but we can see that Obama really started with this precision medicine idea and really wanting to push it way before he was president. So he's going back to 2006 of trying to get legislation going for this. More recently, in 2011, National Research Council had a report, and this was kind of like a roadmap, a tour to precision medicine, and it told us where we should go and the system of analyzing this data, and was a little bit more comprehensive than other things published. But again, there really wasn't, it didn't go anywhere. There wasn't a big push until January 2017 when Obama's Precision Medicine Initiative began. So Dr. Handelsman's presentation really had a lot of information in it, so I can't even begin to tackle all of the information, but I really want to cover 4 main questions that she kind of posed and answered throughout her presentation. Now, the first was, why is now a perfect time for precision medicine? I've said before, when the first push in 2004 of Francis Collins, that wasn't a good time. 2006, still not a good time. 2011, getting better, but not quite there. And now we're kind of there. Why is that? So the first is that sequencing is getting cheaper and faster. So when we look back at mapping the human genome and the Human Genome Project, it cost $22 million and took 2 years to sequence that. And that was around 10 years ago. Now, if we compare that today, it takes less than a day to sequence, and it's between $1,000 to $5,000. So $22 million, 2 years, $1,000 to $5,000, less than 1 day. So we really have made great strides in sequencing getting both cheaper and faster. So that's one of the reasons why it's a perfect time for precision medicine. Another is that we've had technology for biomedical analysis, advances in data science and bioinformatics, and availability of new data. We have electronic health records, and we're really getting into the microbiome and exploring more of that. So those are the reasons that it really is a good time for precision medicine to have a big push. Another big question she asked and answered was, what is necessary to accomplish precision medicine? The first is cohesion and strategic thinking. Second is models of analytic discoveries, practical and math. And data management featuring one single system, because right now we have a lot of different systems to have all of this healthcare data. And if you go from one hospital to another, it kind of gets lost, and there's not a simple one single system to have all of this information. And Dr. Jo Handelsman is saying that we really do need to have that in order to accomplish precision medicine. The goals of precision medicine. We'll start with the short-term goals. So what are they? The first is that we have progress in clinical success with cancer genomics. Cancer is a huge, huge field in this, and a really, really big focus in precision medicine because people's cancers differ widely and greatly. So if we can figure out, okay, the differences between them and kind of start grouping them all together and apart, then it's going to be much easier to use precision medicine to then start treating those and hopefully cure. Another is to build data infrastructure, to invent platform technology. And then for the long-term goals, we're looking to move beyond disease genomics to a broader sense of health multi-omics. So we don't want to just be focusing on disease. We want to be focusing on, okay, the general health and how we can improve that as a long-term goal. A shift in medical care towards prevention, diet, lifestyle, less on drugs, more on the prevention side of things, because if you put more efforts into prevention, then you're not having to do a lot on treatment and cures and all of that. If you can really prevent things, that saves a lot of time, hassle, and lives. Patient involvement in research and care. I talked about that before, of just patients providing a significant role in finding new ways of treating disease and having more of a active role in their treatment and being informed more with that. Reimbursement based on health outcomes and not volume for all payers. So that's an important one. And also just a very general is healthier Americans. We really want to be a healthier country, and hopefully the Precision Medicine Initiative is going to really be improving that to improve the overall health of Americans. So Dr. Jo Handelsman also emphasized the importance of having that one single system for electronic health records. And I just wanted to kind of throw these stats out there that 10 years ago, only 20 to 30% of physicians were using electronic health records. 20 to 30%, 10 years ago. That's how many physicians were using electronic health records. But now, over 90% physicians are using health records just in 10 years. That number jumped from 20 to 30% to 90% in 10 years. So having one system to access all this data is very important, and it solved many problems with sharing data between hospitals and other healthcare facilities and buildings and everything like that, and that there's so many different systems within healthcare that if we can have one system of accessing this data and inputting data and getting data out, of just having all of that in one system would really benefit patients. Now, there's a lot of consequences to this, possibly of, how secure is it? If it's one system, how do you protect people from anybody accessing their data to only their doctors accessing? So there's a lot of issues that go with that, but once those obstacles are kind of moved past, then I think this really, like having an electronic health record system and only having one would be a really major impact on the healthcare industry. So I mentioned at the beginning of the show that the 21st Century Cures Act passed the House of Representatives. It was the same day as this presentation, July 10th, 2015. And so they approved it. 21st Century Cures Act is approved by the House of Representatives with a vote of 344 to 77. So you might be saying, okay, what is this act? Like, it sounds kind of vague. So this act will launch healthcare into the 21st century by, quote, investing in science and medical innovation, incorporating the patient perspective, and modernizing clinical trials to deliver better, faster cures to more patients and loved ones in need. And that was explained by the Energy and Commerce Committee. So this act is a good one in the pharmaceutical industry's eyes if you are a pharmaceutical company, as it removes a lot of the safety mechanisms in place that currently protect the public from unsafe drugs and medical devices. So in the past, medical devices have not been evaluated as rigorously as drugs, and now both of them, if this act becomes a law, is going to be even less kind of prevented with a lot of safety things to prevent drugs from going through. It's going to be easier to get a drug approved by the FDA. Now, the 21st Century Cures Act allows drugs to be put on the market faster, and it's doing so by removing phase 3 testing as a requirement for drug approval. It would also start to base drug approvals on biomarkers rather than actual health outcomes. It also encouraged the production of new antibiotics, which may be troublesome down the road because antibiotics have been compromising our microbiome or the balance of bacteria in our bodies. And here's the problem with that. If someone becomes immune to an antibiotic, later in life then needs an antibiotic, that antibiotic that they're now immune to treat a bacterial infection, they're out of luck. That is not going to work for them anymore, and there may not be a treatment or cure for them out there. Now, this is happening more and more with antibacterial resistance on the upwards trend of kind of saturating ourselves with so much antibiotics that if something happens, doctors throw antibiotics at us, we start to get immune to those. And then when you need it later on, you're out of luck. And that's kind of the issue with that, which is why a lot of people are concerned about antibiotics, as I am. Experiments right now are required to be replicable and have a placebo control. But if this act passes, drugs will be able to bypass this and use biomarkers and surrogate markers rather than health outcomes to judge whether a drug is safe. So they're really using a different method, which can be kind of scary. In the article, The 21st Century Cures Act, Will It Take Us Back in Time?, a New England Journal of Medicine commented on this, and I'll quote them here, "But through a drug's effect on a biomarker can make approval quicker and less costly, especially if the comparable is placebo, it may not always predict the drug's capacity to improve patients' outcomes. Avastin delayed tumor progression in advanced breast cancer, but was shown not to benefit patients. Similarly, Avandia lowered glycol hemoglobin levels in patients with diabetes, even as it increased their risk of myocardial infarction. In 2013, patients began to receive a new drug for tuberculosis approved on the basis of randomized trial relying on a surrogate measure of bacterial counts in the sputum. And even though patients given the drug in that trial had a death rate 4 times that in the comparison group, mostly from tuberculosis. So that's just a couple examples there, 3 examples of how using biomarkers and surrogate measures doesn't always work. So there is a concern that this is not going to be the really safest. It's very efficient, but at the same time, it's fast, but it may not be efficient because it's not doing what it's really supposed to be doing of testing this out and seeing if it's safe or not. The New York Times also challenged this bill in its piece, "Don't Weaken the FDA's Drug Approval Process," explaining it, quote, "could substantially lower the standards for approval of many medical products, potentially placing patients at unnecessary risk of injury or death." So that all sounds kind of dangerous for the public and a little bit scary, right? Well, there's also advantages to this act. I'm trying to show both sides here and really provide a lot of information. So, for one, this act would increase the NIH budget. So the 21st Century Cures Act asks for an annual increase of 3% per year in budget for the National Institute of Health to accommodate for inflation. But it would also provide an additional $2 billion per year for 5 years to fund the National Institute of Health Innovation Fund. Now, the FDA would also receive an extra $550 million to have proper staffing and tools to review these drugs and medical devices. Another feature of this act is to release de-identified data from the NIH clinical trials so that more researchers would have access to this data. So they're getting a lot of money, and they're also having the opportunity to have more research access to the data, and that kind of opens a lot of doors in research. So as much as I've talked about how they're taking safety precautions out, the flip side to this is that it does speed up a new drug and device development and approval. So currently almost all drugs are processed through the FDA within 6 to 10 months of being received. And a third of new drugs are approved on a single trial with a median size of 760 patients, and studies that last around 6 months or less. And these drugs include antibiotics and antifungals. So we really need to carefully strike a balance of maintaining patient safety while getting drugs to the market even faster. That, if we go too fast, we're compromising the safety. But if we're having too many hoops to jump through for safety, we're not getting the drugs onto the market fast enough. So it really is a tough balance between the two. Precision medicine is a piece of this act, as there's an entire section dedicated to it, Title 2, Subject C. And under this section, the FDA would be required to provide guidance to define what precision drug is and to, quote, assess sponsors in the development of such a drug, including clinical studies. Now, the FDA must teach companies methods to identify subsets of people within a disease that will likely respond to a drug. So, again, I talk about this a lot. Hopefully you get the concept by now that you can have a disease, but people within that disease can kind of be split up into subgroups, and some of them will respond to a drug more than others. That's just kind of how it works. And so companies can then market this drug that they've tried and said, okay, this drug is really working for this one subset of this disease. And then they can market it to that subset of the disease that are more likely to respond. And what this act is giving them is orphan drug exclusivity for 7 years. So this means that generic drugs cannot be produced during this time, so there's no competition. So what's an orphan drug? It's a pharmaceutical that remains commercially underdeveloped owing to limited potential for profitability. Medications for people with rare diseases are often orphan drugs because it's really expensive to develop and produce just to give it to a small base of consumers. You don't have a lot of people that are buying them, so financially it's not really worth it to be developing and producing these drugs. But this act is huge for the rare disease community as it focuses on finding pharmaceutical solutions to rare diseases. So it's really hopeful, and a lot of people are really excited about this, and a lot of rare disease groups for specific rare disease, say FAVA, for instance, that's a rare disease, they would be really excited about this. So if you get all those rare disease people together, that's a really big community, even though it's rare diseases, once you pool everyone together. Another aspect affecting the rare disease community is in section 2207 of the legislation, and it makes a change of the humanitarian device exemptions. So these are devices intended to treat rare diseases. Currently, a rare disease is defined by affecting fewer than 4,000 people according to federal law. 4,000 people. Now, this act would change it to affect fewer than 8,000. So why is this good? Okay, they're upping the ante. They're saying, okay, we can now say a rare disease is less than 8,000 people. Why is it good? All right, so devices that are intended to treat a rare disease are eligible to be approved based only on their safety in humans, not evidence of their efficacy. So if it passes this act, more of these devices can be made available to people as the diseases that are now eligible have expanded. So they are granting this exemption to more diseases because they're going from 4,000 and less people affected by this disease to 8,000 and less people affected by this disease that these devices would be applied to, that they only need to show that their safety in humans and not evidence of their efficacy elsewhere. If you're interested in learning more about rare diseases, I really want to give a little shout out here to NORD. NORD is a fantastic resource for rare diseases. You can visit rarediseases.org to learn more. They've got write-ups on lots of rare diseases. They have communities on there that if you have a rare disease or you know of someone that has a rare disease, you can help kind of link them to that. And you can join yourself and meet people that have a rare disease like you. And they have lots of different Really just a lot of educational things, especially great for parents that have a child with a rare disease. And there's so much there to learn. It's really a fantastic resource. I really want to plug it. rarediseases.org. The authors of the bill commented, quote, "Today we took a big leap on the path to cures, but we still have much work left to do. 344 votes today should be a springboard for action. On to the Senate." And they're right. It's going to be going on to the Senate. You can read the bill for yourself. I'm going to be posting on the website, dnapodcast.com. And you can also follow the updates to see when it's voted on by the Senate. And when I hear of it, I'll mention it on the show. But yeah, you can go to dnapodcast.com. It will be under today's episode, under the show notes there. And I'll have a little link for you. You can also follow the conversation on Facebook and Twitter with the hashtag Cures2015 and hashtag Path2Cures with the number 2 there. So Path2Cures. So there's a lot of people commenting on these, so I really want you guys to be researching this, and you should always listen or read multiple sources to kind of develop your own opinion on things. I tried to kind of just provide the facts on this one, but obviously my opinion slips in there a little bit sometimes, right? But yeah, you definitely check those out because you can see who's supporting it, who's not supporting it, and why that is. That's really important to be doing. Well, that wraps up today's episode of DNA Today. You can tune in next week, Monday at 11:30 a.m. on WHUS.org or 91.7 FM if you're in the stores area, always to learn more about genetics. If you want to learn more about genetics, you can also visit dnapodcast.com. That's the show's website. Follow on Twitter at DNA Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at KIRADINEEN. That's Kiradanine. And I do have to say my favorite is emails, info@dnapodcast.com. Shoot me anything that you're thinking about genetics, or if you're involved in genetics, I'd love to have you on the program. So definitely, info@dnapodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and join me next week again, Monday at 11:30 a.m. to learn and discover new advances in the world of genetics.